That was when I was using... Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm Nikki, and today's video I'm going to be discussing emotional and stress eating and talking about my personal experience with it and things I've done to overcome it. To be honest, it is something that I do still deal with, and even more so the past month, I feel like it's been a little bit of a struggle for me. So these are some of the things that I do to kind of avoid emotional eating and using food to cope with my emotions. And I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right in. If you enjoy this video or find it helpful, please go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. I am not a licensed therapist or anything, but there is definitely a science behind mentality when it comes to food and using food as a coping mechanism. And like I said, I'm just going to be sharing my own personal thoughts on this. But emotional eating is when you use food as a coping mechanism for different types of emotions. So it could be anger, it could be sadness, it could be stress. I feel like mostly I deal with it when it comes to stress, but everybody's different and they have their different ways to deal with those things. And for a lot of people, food is what provides that comfort. It is a very tough thing to deal with, and it's something I've struggled with my entire life. I have a couple other videos on my channel where I get more into detail about my past struggle with it. But in 2020, I lost 70 pounds, and I've just really worked to slowly heal and improve my relationship with food and not use those coping mechanisms by going to food. But one thing that helps is just acknowledging that it's a real thing. I carried so much shame about it for so long. I honestly thought I was the only one who struggled with it growing up. When I was in middle school and throughout high school and college, I didn't think that anybody else had the issues that I did when it came to food and wanting to eat in hiding and use it to cope with so many different things. Throughout college, I really struggled. I was not very happy. I didn't like being away from home, and I had a lot of stress and pressure playing volleyball and really trying to maintain my grades. I was really hard on myself when it came to schoolwork. And because of that, food was like my best source of relief and comfort. And I did a lot of eating and hiding, and it felt very shameful. I always felt guilt after, but I always have used food as my comfort thing. And it's not a very healthy thing, especially because you have to eat every day. And so having an unhealthy relationship with food is tough to deal with, honestly. And even at the peak of my weight gain, which was, I would say, in like 2017, 2018, 2019, that's when I became my heaviest and when I hit my breaking point before I started my weight loss journey. That was when I was using food so much to cope with the stress I had. I was working myself way too hard. I was working 50 hours a week at a bakery and then starting to run my own cookie business on the side, which really took up a lot of time. It was even more of a full-time job than my actual job, but it was something I was passionate about. I really struggled to say no to orders. And again, I have more about that in other videos. During that time, I was not getting enough sleep. I was constantly having a packed schedule. And when I got home for dinner and sat down on the couch and had a big meal, that was sometimes the best part of my day, just kind of decompressing. I would honestly have to eat as fast as I could a lot of the time because I had to get back to work on cookies. But food became so much of a comfort thing for me. And on top of just my meals even being a release and relief from all of the things that I was dealing with, I also found myself snacking at night and just standing in front of the pantry and really emotional stress eating, and it just was not healthy for me. That's when I put on the most weight, and I was just not living a healthy lifestyle for my future especially. So of course I want to mention that the main thing when it comes to stress and emotional eating is finding the source of what's causing these emotions, what's causing the stress, what's causing the sadness, the anger. And honestly, there are times when you don't have control over what is going on and what's causing these emotions. When I was in college and I was really sad and stuck where I was, there really wasn't much I could do. I was on a scholarship, I played for the volleyball team, I had all these classes I was enrolled in. I couldn't just up and leave and just like make it work differently. My schedule was very structured, not even in my control because of volleyball and stuff. That was a little bit harder for me to kind of find the source of the problem and fix it because I really couldn't change my situation. I had to just get through those years of school. But when it came more to the past few years before I started my weight loss, I was the one who was in control of my work. I needed to learn to say no. I needed to talk to my boss at the bakery I was working at and cut back my hours there. I was just doing all of these things to please other people. I couldn't say no, like I said. And I finally realized, okay, maybe I can take a little control of this situation to cut back on some of this stress because this is causing me the most stress I've ever experienced. When I finally did that and I realized I could be in control and make my life just a little bit better, I did. I talked to my boss, I cut back my hours, I started saying no to more cookie orders, which really did help me in the long run because then I was able to get more sleep. I was able to take more time to plan out meals and not just get takeout for every meal. Finding the source of what is causing these emotions and seeing what you can do to improve that situation can really make a difference. And I feel like that's a great starting point. It's really difficult. I'm not saying it's easy, but if you can do anything to start at the source of these emotions and see if you can improve that situation in any way, I definitely recommend starting there. But when it comes to some tips of things that have helped me to stop emotional eating, I first of all really prioritize fueling my body throughout the day. When I don't eat all day, and sometimes this would happen when I was working at the bakery and stuff, I would just have like a really quick lunch, and then, like I said, I would come home and have a feast for dinner. I would sit on the couch. It was the best part of my day, and I would just sit there and consume this food, and it provided me so much comfort and honestly joy, which I felt so shameful feeling that way and even saying that, but there was nothing to be embarrassed about. It was just what my coping mechanism was, and I've slowly worked my way through that. But fueling my body throughout the day and not being hungry all day and wanting to just sit down and have that meal has really made a difference. So making sure that I have a nourishing breakfast, I try to add some protein, some vegetables. I like to make my protein coffee, which is just a protein shake with some espresso or some cold brew concentrate, and that really helps me to stay full throughout the day, especially when I'm just like having a busy day of working on stuff, because I still do cookies and it takes up a lot of time, but now I've created a routine and a schedule that allows me to prioritize fueling my body and eating nourishing meals. Making sure that I'm having a diet that's high in fiber, high in protein, those things really help to make you feel more full and satisfied throughout the day. Really helps when it comes to nighttime, when sometimes like during the day I don't even think about all the things that are stressing me out or making me sad or angry, and then when it comes to night I start to think about those. That's when I want to use food for comfort. But a lot of the times if I've fueled my body throughout the day, I don't have that hunger as much, and it just makes me feel better and stay more on track when I'm consistently eating throughout the day and making myself feel better by fueling my body. Also just having lower point substitutes. So when it comes to meals, being able to use protein pasta instead of regular pasta allows me to have a little bit bigger of a portion, which again, I like to eat bigger portions. Finding healthier substitutes that I can incorporate to just stay on track with my goals really does help too. And specifically having lower point or healthier snacks, because it's always those types of foods that I want to emotional eat at night, especially when I want to go in the pantry and eat a bunch of snacks or desserts. Having a snack mix where I mix some air pop popcorn with a few different chips, but I measure it out and then I get out of the kitchen, that really helps me to feel satisfied. Or if I want something sweet, yogurt bowls are really filling, and sometimes I'll make them a little more indulgent by adding some peanut butter. I like to add some cereal. I like to mix it up and add some things so that it still feels like more, but it's not what I used to do when I would emotional overeat on a bunch of sweets and stuff like that. Having those options really makes it a little bit easier to stick to because I actually enjoy them. I look forward to them, and then they fill me up that way. Kind of going off of that, I don't restrict or cut anything out when it comes to food. There are definitely foods that if I buy them all the time, I'm going to be tempted to eat them, so I do have them in moderation, but not restricting anything makes me not crave it as much. When I would cut out a bunch of like sweets or anything like that in the past and just completely restrict them, I craved them so much more, and then when it came down to using food to cope, I would way overdo it with those types of foods because that's what I wanted. So I know some people even mention that they can't even have those types of foods around. They have trigger foods that cause them to overeat because when it's in front of them, they just want to eat it all. And if that's something that you know personally you deal with, you don't have to fully restrict the food, but not buying it all the time can also be really helpful to just not have it around and not feel tempted by it. There are some times where I will buy something and I wish there was just like one of it because I don't want to have the whole package, but I want that one and I don't want to restrict it fully. So finding ways to do that, even if you are like going to a family event or something and you want a specific dessert that you enjoy, or even like an appetizer I like, sometimes I'll have more indulgent appetizers. So I'll make them for family events or like parties or something and then bring them. I can have my portion there, but then they keep it at the party. I don't bring it home and I don't feel tempted with it. I do start to notice, and like I said, recently I feel like I've been struggling a little bit more with trying to use food to cope. I feel like there are times where I just crave it and I want to just go and eat and not think about anything. When it comes to eating more of those unhealthy foods, I feel like it triggers it more. So this past month in August was my birthday and I did a lot of celebrating. I had a lot of sweet things. We got takeout a lot and I started to feel like I would just crave it more and more the more we had it. So again, having it in moderation, not having it all the time, it still is helpful to have some structure with that to not lead to as many temptations, because I do feel like when I start to have more of that like processed food or takeout food like every day or more and more frequently, I crave it so much more. And then when I don't have it as much, I don't even really think about it. I'm fueled by the meals that I'm making and stuff, and I don't think about it as much. That's one thing that helps me too, again, to kind of make sure that I'm still getting back on track if I've had some celebrations or indulgences. I really make sure to get back to that so that I don't feel those like addicting like cravings for those types of foods. Another thing that's helped me when it comes to emotional eating, like I said, when I would sit down and eat, I wouldn't even think about it. I would just kind of scarf my food down and it would be a huge portion. So many calories I would consume at once, but I wasn't even thinking about it because it was making me feel good and I just was using it to cope. But now I really try to make an effort to be more mindful while I'm eating. I try to eat slower. I try to make sure that I'm not just like sitting on my phone and eating. Sometimes I'll sit on my phone and do stuff, but if I do that, I really try to eat slowly and not do it so mindlessly, because the more mindful you are about it, the more mindful you are about your hunger. It really does help you get more in tune with your body to know when it's a craving that you're having or when you just want to use food as a coping mechanism versus when you're actually hungry. That has taken me some time to really realize. One thing that's helped me with that is even just tracking my food and realizing how many extra calories I would consume at a time when I would emotional eat or overeat in general. Being a little bit more mindful about that. If tracking works for you, that's something that's really helped me. But making sure that I put my phone down, I drink water, I eat slower. All of those things just help me to feel more satisfied and just improve my relationship with food. Like I said, for me personally, when it comes to emotional eating, a lot of the times it happens at night when the day is kind of over. I sit with my thoughts and I start to just think about food. I start to crave food more. And one thing that helps me if I feel like I just want to go in the kitchen and have something is just doing a task before that. Maybe I am feeling hungry and I want to go eat something, but before I do that, I do something productive. So whether it's even just like replying to some DMs or doing a quick cleaning task I had or anything like that, just before, even if it takes like 5 minutes, to kind of reevaluate, again, kind of going back to being mindful about it and see if I actually am hungry or if I was just bored, I just needed a distraction and I was just like sitting with my emotions. And a lot of the times that is what it is. I start doing something and then I'll just continue doing it because I'm like, oh, I'm fine, I can just do this, and then I'm more productive. It's not always easy in the moment to do that, but it really does make a difference. And a lot of the time I realize I was just kind of going to mindlessly eat. But there are other times when I do something, I do the productive task, and then I realize, no, I'm still hungry, I want something, and then I'll go in the kitchen, and that's where my healthier options really do help to make a difference. Getting the food and getting away from the kitchen also helps. I don't feel as tempted to go back for more or stand with the bag open. I really try to be precise and weigh out measurements of things when I track especially. But a lot of the time, just doing that quick task makes me realize that maybe I wasn't really hungry. There are also times where I just really want to use food as a coping mechanism and I know I'm not hungry and I still have that urge to go do it. And I start to get really irritable. It's just something I've always struggled with. I have always felt shame for admitting this, but whenever I make these videos, it helps to hear that so many other people can relate to these feelings. And even if you can't, just hearing and being more understanding about it really does help me to know that like people understand where I'm coming from with this thing that I deal with, because it is hard. It is something that brings on a lot of shame and guilt, and I don't want to do it. But a lot of the times it just feels like I don't have the control over it, especially when I get in those moments where I'm feeling like I know I don't need to eat more. I feel irritable and I feel like food is the only thing that's gonna like bring me joy or comfort in the moment. I try to do something that makes me happy. So I take the dogs for a walk or even just go on a walk outside. I'll play with the dogs. I'll read a book. I'll crochet. crochet. I've recently started painting for fun, and honestly, it has been amazing to decompress at night with some painting, and it really just helps me to clear my mind. A lot of the times when I feel like snacking, I'll just pick up the canvas that I'm working on, and I'm not great or anything, it's just fun to do, but I'll pick up the canvas, I'll just start painting, and then I get lost in that. It feels good, it helps me decompress, and it helps me kind of deal with those emotions I'm feeling in a better way than using food. So doing stuff like that, even taking a bath sometimes I'll do, and that really helps me to just relax and decompress. Finding healthy things that I enjoy that aren't going to the kitchen and eating really helps me in those moments where, like I said, you don't even feel the hunger, you just like crave eating and overeating and indulging. And in those times when I feel that way, I really just try to find a task that I'm gonna enjoy. Another thing that really helps me is just prioritizing my mental health. I kind of said that from the start when it comes to dealing with the source of the emotion you're feeling. That is really helpful, but prioritizing my mental health day to day, having balance so I don't feel restricted, because in the past I did feel that way. In high school, when I would just have an orange and pretzel sticks for lunch, I would come home and I wanted to eat everything in sight. And again, I would use those emotions of stress to just kind of like justify it. And so dealing with my mental health, making sure I am in a healthy place there as best as I can. And again, that's not always easy with everything going on and with the stress of life. It is very difficult. But in the past, I'd put my mental health on the back burner, and I just do not do that anymore. Also, just having balance and feeling like I can enjoy things that I want to, enjoy things in moderation. Having that balance really does help when it comes to not feeling restricted, not feeling like food is the only thing that can bring me comfort and joy. A couple other little things that help me when it comes to avoiding emotional eating. Getting enough sleep is so important. I say this in every single video, but getting sleep, first of all, correlates to your stress levels. It really does make a difference on your mental health and your sadness, your anger. Your emotions are definitely amplified if you're not getting enough sleep. So prioritizing sleep has made a huge difference for me. I still struggle to get enough sleep every night. It is a challenge for me, but it is something that I try to prioritize because it really does make me feel better. Also, drinking water throughout the day really, really helps. I do have like a sweet drink here or there that I enjoy, whether it's like a diet pop or something, but having water mostly throughout the day helps me to stay hydrated, to feel better, gives me energy, fuels my body, and it's just important overall for your health in general. So prioritize water, prioritize sleep. One thing that helps me too at night when I'm feeling like I want to just eat a bunch of sweets or something and overindulge in them, I have an apple every day after dinner, and it's not to replace my dessert. I still have dessert after, but when I finish eating, I eat my apple. It makes me feel a little bit more full and satisfied, and it satisfies my sweet tooth a little, and then I go on and have whatever dessert I want. But a lot of the time by then, after dinner and the apple, I'm not as hungry and not as likely to overdo it when it comes to having something. One last thing I want to mention is just having structure. Stick to your routine as best as you can. Find what works for you. I'm not saying you have to have like an hour by hour routine that you stick to every day, but having some habits every day that you can consistently stick with, and even things that help you to stay on track. For me, ingredient prepping is huge. It helps me to just stay on track with my meals, get vegetables, get proteins, all of those things. And it's not always easy, but really prioritizing my routine and my healthy habits, it's kind of like a domino effect when it comes to the choices I make and just not being as likely to use food as a coping mechanism again. I saw a quote the other day that was someone talking, and they said something about like action leads to motivation. It's not the other way around. Motivation doesn't lead to action. So you can't just wait for motivation to come around, because it usually isn't gonna happen. A lot of the times you just have to make the decision and the choice to act on it, and then it'll lead to more motivation. And it's so true. It's something I'm really, really struggling with right now because I've just felt so overwhelmed and stressed this past month. But when I do that, when I do the action, it leads to more motivation, which then helps in the long run to balance out my stress levels, not cause me to use food to cope with different emotions. All of these things just really help lead to a healthier lifestyle overall, which has helped me to stay on track and kind of fight those urges when I'm feeling like using food. But that doesn't mean that I don't do it sometimes. And like I mentioned, even recently, I've been struggling a little bit more than usual. And there are times where I do it. I just overeat. I use food to cope with emotions. I feel stressed. I feel guilt after, but I have to remind myself that it's okay. I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna make a healthy choice the next decision I make. And a lot of the times tracking what I did have during that time helps me to, first of all, realize how much you're able to just consume in that short amount of time. And it really opens my eyes to, hopefully not do it again. But also just tracking and moving on is a mentality that has helped me so much to release that shame and guilt that I put around food and just make me realize, okay, I'm human, I did it, I'm moving on, I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to make my next meal a really healthy, nourishing one. And it just kind of helps me to have that mentality over what I used to have, where I would emotional eat and then go even further down, continue to do it because I thought I blew it and there was no point anymore. So I might as well just keep doing it. Having that mindset that you just track and move on, and even if it's hard, even if you feel shame after it, remind yourself that we're human, it's okay, and just do your best to get back on track right after that. Overall, this topic is always just a difficult one to discuss because it is something that, like I said, throughout my life has brought me a lot of shame, and I thought I was so alone with it. I really didn't know anyone else who dealt with these issues that I had or dealt with using food as a coping mechanism. I really didn't know anyone else who would eat in hiding or felt shame about what they would consume in a short amount of time. Like, I just thought that I was alone with this, and sharing my story throughout the years and my experiences, so many other people have come out and said exactly the same things and just very similar things that they've dealt with. And it helps me to know that I'm not alone, but I hope it also helps you guys to know you're not alone dealing with this, because it is hard. It is something that makes you feel bad about yourself. You feel shame, you feel guilt, and it really is okay. It's just important to do your best for yourself to move in the right direction, to fuel your body, feel better, do the habits that make you feel good, and find things that are enjoyable to you so that you can hopefully just work to improve your relationship with food and not use it as a way to cope with different stress, anger, and sadness. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you have any other suggestions of things that help you when you feel like you want to use food to cope with emotions, leave them down below. I'd love to hear your guys' experiences as well. I appreciate your guys' support always. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, give it a like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.